You're listening to the Intuitive Mastery podcast. Hi, I'm Kateconnolly, and with over 15 years of intuitive healing and teaching experience, I'm here to help you celebrate intuition and value authenticity to create a world where you have the freedom to live your best life. This podcast is here to teach you how to apply the principles of spirituality, healing, and mindset to have true and lasting joy, all from the inside out. This is the Intuitive Mastery podcast. Hi everybody, my name is Kateconnolly and I'm here for my podcast number 3. And this podcast is around energetic detachment and being able to stay kind of really sovereign and calm in your body. I run an intuitive mastery school, which is a super affordable, super connected way to connect in with your intuition and also to learn about various aspects of your own healing journey, your spiritual journey. And there's just lots and lots of tools involved where you can kind of learn and grow and be part of a community. If you'd like to join us, we have 2 weeks free and we have the link below. I also have loads of free offers and things on offer on my website, and there's also lots of choices down below. I also have a book and a workbook for the book, which is called The Intuitive Heart Revolution, and it's also about kind of really opening up into your intuitive knowing and your knowledge and understanding how to connect into it and how to work through any blocks that kind of come up in your way. So in my mastery school at the moment, we're working on intuitive relationships or learning to understand how to spiritually interact in relationships, and most importantly, learning how to, I guess, navigate the energetics of it. Now, this is potentially most important for what I would call empaths or people who have empathic ability. But empathic ability is essentially this ability to feel into other people very easily, and they also seem to take on other people's energy very easily. So typically we have these auric fields that sit around us, and they're kind of circular or soft fields that sit around our body, and there's multiple layers of them. And those layers form energetic kind of barriers or boundaries. They have different energies associated with them. I have a whole kind of series on that. But essentially, what happens is that our auric fields cannot always necessarily be completely balanced or healed. And what that means is that sometimes we have like little holes in them, or we have what we call like bleed throughs where our energy kind of dissipates outside of our auric field, or we kind of tune into accidentally other people's energy. And it can really mess with our sense of feeling calm, but also our sense of sovereignty or our sense of being kind of separate from other people. And the reason that's really important is that we often get enmeshed or overly energetically interconnected with people that we don't necessarily want to do that with, and or we get so enmeshed with people from an energetic perspective that sometimes we forget where we end and the next person starts. And from a loving, kind of close interpersonal connection point of view, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But sometimes it can actually create an energy drain. It can create a bit of a lack of identity. So we start to lose our sense of self and our own opinions and our own ideas. But also, most importantly, we tend to then sometimes take on other people's problems as well. So you've probably all seen it where you've had a conversation with someone and then you walk away from it feeling really exhausted and drained, and that person might feel a lot better. Typically, what happens in that situation is that we're accidentally kind of pulling their energy from them, or they're accidentally throwing their energy onto us. And if we don't have really strong boundaries and auric fields, then we can somehow take that on, and then we kind of carry that burden like it's our own and not actually belonging to someone else. And this is where empaths struggle the most, is because usually for an empath, their auric field has like holes in it, and we have the ability then to kind of feel into other people and into situations and things like that, so we can understand quite deeply where other people are feeling and thinking. But the downside of that is that the boundaries are limited. And so we're much more likely to then accidentally take on other people's stuff and or feel overburdened when we don't need to be. And for high level empaths who are not aware that they are, will often have a lot of heaviness in their life or in their body. They'll feel overly burdened at all times, pretty much. And then they can start to, from a physical perspective, actually take on the energies of inflammation or autoimmune disease or other kind of afflictions that often don't necessarily have a reasoning or an explanation, but it can actually be very, very burdensome. So, for people who are taking on other people's stuff, or you're in a relationship where you feel a little bit like it's a bit heavy, or that there's kind of stuff going on in between the two of you that's feeling burdensome or feeling really heavy, this is actually a really helpful session for you because this can actually give you some tools and some information on how to do that. So, when we have any relationship, but particularly strong, close relationships where we have a lot of interaction, we have to be really mindful that our thoughts and our feelings and our intentions become things. Thoughts become things is a Mike Dooley concept, and I love Mike Dooley. He's incredible. And it really is true. So when we have thoughts and feelings, they tend to create kind of almost energetic threads that go between us and them. And even if we don't want to feel that, it happens anyway. As soon as we have an intention, as soon as we think or speak about somebody, especially if we have, a sentence like, I wish so and so would just so and so, we will absolutely 100% of the time have then a cord or a thread go between us and them. It's just an energetic cord. You obviously don't see it. You obviously don't necessarily know or intuit that it's there very much. But the more that you do it, the more there becomes. And what that can do energetically is start to enmesh you with that other person. And an enmeshment is not something that's super helpful because if you see anything that's enmeshed, it's kind of all kind of screwed up with itself or with something else, and it's really hard to pry apart. So when you've got those energies that are really hard to pry apart, you don't know where one of the things ends and the other one starts. And this is what happens with people's energies. They get so kind of caught up with each other that it's really hard to sometimes tell the difference and to sometimes differentiate and discern what is yours and your own sovereign thinking and therefore your own intuitive hits versus somebody else's. And that enmeshment can actually create huge amounts of energy drain, huge amounts of stress, and it can create this sense of feeling just either really drained or overburdened on a regular basis. So there's a couple of levels to this. Obviously, there's like that level of responsibility around being mindful of our thoughts and feelings. And, outside of trying to police every single thought and feeling that we have, it's super important for us to keep sending ourselves love and acceptance for how we're feeling about things. So it's not about shutting things down by any stretch of the imagination. It's about when we have a relationship like that with someone, we need to honor and acknowledge our part in it and send ourselves acceptance and love for how we're feeling and potentially any healing for any reactivity that we have in that particular relationship or with that person. And remembering to constantly send ourselves love on a regular basis so that we don't tend to get caught up in the pain body or the relationship issues that can arise. So that's step one. And then the next step is looking at finding ways to kind of energetically disconnect from that person, not to end the relationship and not to kind of let go of any promises or commitments or anything that you have to that person. What you're actually choosing to let go of is all of the unhealthy attachments and all of those thoughts and intentions and worries and concerns and threads that you've put out between you. And when you can do that on a regular basis, it keeps everything pretty clean. There's a lot less of that enmeshment that happens. You can usually really sit quite strongly with your own intuitive knowing and your own intuitive hits. And you can feel a little bit more free or a lot more free on a regular basis. Now, for people who have really strong boundaries, and my husband is one of them, he doesn't really seem to get enmeshed with anybody else. He seems to be able to stay quite sovereign, and it's a pretty good gift that he's got there. So if you are one of those people where you have really strong boundaries and you have a very strong sense of who you are and how you live in the world, then you might have a lot less of these enmeshments than with someone who doesn't have that. So if you are someone who struggles with your boundaries a little bit, if you are someone who is highly empathic and doesn't know how to, seal your aura and allow yourself to stay detached from other people's stuff, it is going to be a lot harder to kind of stay away from that level of enmeshment or that feeling of being kind of sucked into someone else's energy. And that can often show up with an inability to have a clear thought, make a clear decision. It can show up in many different ways where you might previously have struggled to differentiate between what you want and what someone else wants. If you're in a family or a relationship where you very frequently have no idea what you want or you have no idea where you're at, there's probably a level of enmeshment happening there. And it's not about judging yourself or other people, and it's not about trying to let go of other people's control or whatever else. This is just purely an energetic awareness. So, like I said, the first step is really around sending yourself a lot of love and compassion around any reactivity that you have or any sense of feeling like you don't have that sovereignty away from that person, and loving deeply all those parts of you that are feeling like you're not free. And by doing that, you already start to kind of release yourself and start to feel a bit more free in your own being and in your own sovereignty, which is really powerful. And then the next level is to then just very gently and lovingly ask for all of those connections to be released. I usually use Archangel Michael for this, Archangel Michael of the Light. He's an incredible healer. He's probably one of the most well-known and archangelics for humans. And he can come in and he actually uses this sort of truth to release a lot of the cords and the connections between you and other people. So it's actually a really powerful gift that he has, and that when you call him in, he can actually help you to release and dissolve all of these threads and these cords and these hooks and these ties between you and other people. And like I said, it's not about letting go of the relationship. It is very much around owning your sovereignty and letting go of any messiness that's in there. Because for any of you that's had a really long term either relationship with anybody, it could be partners, parents, kids, friends, there is going to be a level of enmeshment because for 99.9% of us, we enter these relationships with an open heart, but also potentially a little bit less consciousness around that energetic projection that we might put out there. Um, Other times that it's really, really important as well is when we have a relationship that's something that we don't want to be a part of. So when we have broken up with someone, when we've got a bit of an issue with somebody else, um, and we don't want to be enmeshed or caught up in the energy of that dissonance, we can absolutely call on Archangel Michael to release those cords and those ties between us and that person. If you have strong karmic connections with that person, it can be really hard to release that. But you could probably get a really good energy healer to help you with that, to get someone to actually really kind of release all of the different layers that can happen between you and that person. And there's so many. You can have a past life connection, you can have an ancestral connection, you can have karmic connections, you can have intergalactic connections, interdimensional connections, you can have inner child connections. There's so many different ways. Sometimes different souls incarnate together over multiple lifetimes, and then you can have that kind of connection as well. It just depends on how deep and how wide the relationship with that person goes, and it can be quite difficult to intuit that on your own at times. But if you're not sure, there are some really fantastic energy healers out there that can help with you. Or you can jump into our mastery school and learn some of the tools. But this will be very, very good at helping to just reset the tone of a relationship at any point. And it is really around allowing yourself to release any hooks, any cords, any barbs, any ties, and attachments, enmeshments, contracts, surrogacies, influence between you and that person. It's around calling all of your own sovereign energy back to you and releasing everything that isn't yours. So it's about bringing everything back to your own auric field and releasing everything back to someone else's that isn't yours to handle. And that process in and of itself is a really, really powerful way to just reset. If you don't feel that necessarily, even just by asking, it will happen for you. And the proof is in the pudding. I always say the proof is in the pudding. So I've noticed with a couple of my super close relationships, when there's a little bit of dissonance in there, or when I feel like there's a bit of a need for a reset, I will do exactly that process. And honestly, within half an hour or an hour, usually, if it's one of my super close people that I, live with or spend a lot of time with, things are reset. And energetically, things are different. Our relationship flows differently, and we're much more likely to either reach resolution or try a different tack or have just another level of balance and peace and harmony together. So it is something that's worth kind of at least trying. There's no harm in trying it and then seeing what happens. The mantra of set them free, and if they're yours, they'll come back is 100% true in my experience, especially with doing something like this where you are energetically setting them free. So you are helping them to regain their sovereignty, you're helping you to regain yours, and you're sitting in a place of allowing whatever's supposed to unfold with love to unfold. So I hope that's helpful. It is something that I use on a fairly regular basis, especially with my close people. If I feel like there is a level of energy between myself and even a client or a friend that feels a little bit too enmeshed or a little bit messy, or if there's something that just feels like it's not purely in love, then I'll use this process and it is really helpful. So, why is this good for intuition? I guess you might be asking, is that in order for us to be really strongly clued into our own soul energy and our own soul voice, we have to get rid of the noise. The noise is one of the biggest things that stops us from being able to tune into our intuition and be able to trust it and know it really well. So, if we have periods of time where we're finding it really hard to tune into ourselves, it could just be that you have energies or connections to other people or other things, even that are finding it really hard for you to maintain and honor that sovereignty. So, just by doing a really simple disconnection, by removing all of those cords and ties or calling Archangel Michael in to remove them for you, it gives you that opportunity then to let go of all of those thought forms and all of those energies that don't actually belong to you. And it gives you the opportunity to open up into a deeper level of yourself without any confusion. And that's a really powerful thing. So if you're wanting to be tuning into your intuition all the time, but you're finding it really messy and your head's all over the place and it's really hard for you to tune in, this is a really great option just to kind of clear the noise out and to get things really calm and balanced in your body. I hope that's really helpful. Have a wonderful week. I will be next here in another week to talk to you about another level of our intuitive relationships, which we're exploring in our school. All right, take care.